Hello and welcome. 2020 is over. And among all the other things that happened this year, there was one bright spot. And that is indie games. I've been doing indie games for the past 4 years or so. This YouTube channel for 6 now. And I think of all those years, this is probably the best year, the most good indie games have come out, I think, this year. And I do this thing where at the end of the year, I talk about the best games of the year, and this is that time. So that's what we're going to do today. All the ones running by the screen at the moment are the runners-up. I've tried to limit this thing down, and I have done so successfully, I think, to 10 games. We got the top 10 games for this list, and all those running by there are the honorable mentions. And so we're going to talk about some of the best ones that I played this year. Now, my prerequisites, my requirements, my conditions is that the game is fun. I don't care who made the game. I don't care how much money they spent on marketing or whatever. All I care about is how fun the game was. Now, I put some time into a few indie games this year. On my playlist has about 500 of them on there. So I played a few. And one thing that's, I guess, to know about me before getting into this is this list might be a little different than the ones you're used to seeing, just because I play so many different games. I like games that stand out, that sort of differentiate themselves from the typical genre. So this might be a little different, but we'll see how it goes. So, number 10. The first one on the list is probably the most unknown of the group, but it's Mainframe Defenders. This is by Old Byte Apps and came out back in February. If you were to take something like Cogmind and mash it into something like XCOM, this is what you would get. It's a turn-based tactical game with robots. Now, I play a lot of turn-based tactical games, and the thing about this one that stands out, that's not something that it's something that's different than your typical turn-based tactical game, is the diverse tactics, all the customization that you can put into each of your mechs. You've got a group of mechs here fighting across some sort of meltdowns going on, and all these mechs are whatever. But we're a bunch of mechs. You customize them. You throw on all these different parts to make them fight however you want to fight. You can either blast them with bullets, or maybe you burn the other robots, or maybe you can have a debuff bot, or maybe you melt them. There's just a ton of customization in there. That is what makes this one stand out so much, and the diversity in how you can play the game. It's not just move, shoot. There's a lot more thrown in there, and it deserves the spot at number 10 of my list of top 10 indie games. Number 9 is Yes, Your Grace. This came out back in March by Brave at Night and published by No More Robots. It is a medieval decision-making sim, which doesn't sound fun at all, but what's going on here is you are running a kingdom, and it has this sort of create your own adventure style of game. It's big time on the story driven, and your decisions, of course, play out what the story does. The thing about the story is what makes this game so great is while you're trying to balance the needs of your kingdom, being king, people come talk to you and ask you to give them some chickens or whatever. You're also trying to balance your family, and you've got this sort of Fiddler on the Roof style thing going with your daughters. They all run off and tradition and whatever, and they're not following that. And there's also a brewing war off in the background and an army marching on your gate, and you have to kind of balance all this stuff, and it's just fantastic. I played a couple of live streams with this, and I played through the full game, and I would happily play it again because there's enough changes in there, or enough other ways of playing with the decisions that it would make it interesting, I think. Number 8, The Wind and Wilting Blossom. This is by Pickle Feet Games. Came out in December. I played it originally before then when it was on itch.io, but it has its full release now as of a few weeks ago. This is a story-driven, turn-based roguelite. If you were to take FTL and Heroes of Might and Magic, mash them together, and then throw it into feudal Japan, that's what you would get. You would get this game. Rather than building a spaceship like on FTL, you choose your leader. And each time you get progress through the game, you can unlock new leaders, which changes how you play the game. And rather than having crew like you would in FTL, you bring on, soldiers and an army to bring with you in this turn-based tactical Heroes of Might and Magic style of thing. And of course, it has this, this oncoming army trying to take you out as you make your way through the story. But this one makes my list at number 8. Also kind of an unknown one. Number 7, Amazing Cultivation Simulator. So this one, I've only played it since November. It came out before then, but the full release was in November, as well as the English translation. It's by GSQ Games, and if I had, I suppose if I had more time in this game, it might actually make it higher on my list. But I don't have just enough hours into it to give it a full appreciation of the game. But it looks like RimWorld. It has a heavy influence of RimWorld and Dwarf Fortress. And if you take something like that and you just throw on a heavy dose of mythology, then that's what you get. Rather than building a fortress, you're building a school. And in that school, you're going to be training and cultivating your people and trying to create mages, essentially. There's this whole like genre of this style of thing, which I have no knowledge of, but is still fantastic. And it takes RimWorld and just sort of cranks it up a notch and takes it in a completely different direction. And I appreciate that. Number 6, Cloudpunk. This is by Ion Lands, came out in April. This one is if you wanted to ever be a delivery boy in a cyberpunk city, then this is the game. The thing that stands out from this one, it's a big heavy story thing, and you're sort of flying around in this world, open world, and you can follow the story, which is what I did I did a live stream through this one, played through the full thing. There's several different ways of diverting the story and the quest as well, and you can just have this sort of cyberpunk RPG in this open world. The atmosphere, though, is what sort of sets it apart, and it has a Fifth Element style of feel to it as you're just sort of driving around in this world, and that's what stood it out. The story, of course, had me hooked, and that's why it makes number 6. Number 5, Townscaper. This one, when I first played this one on the channel, came out in June, by the way, by Oscar Stahlberg. I clarify this as not really a game, but more just like playing with your toys. And still, that's basically what the game is. It's not a city builder. It is a sandbox, but essentially it's just a town building toy. There's no quests. There's no rules. You just build a town, and it doesn't sound the most exciting just by talking about it. But if you sit down and play the thing, it's fantastic. And I could see spending many, many hours just playing with the toy because you're just building a little town, and it's incredibly well done for it being what it is, and it has earned my number 5 spots, the true indie game here for this thing, on my list. Number 4, Horizon's Gate by Rad Codex and published back in March. This one is it's an open world ship sailing around kind of a party building tactical thing. For many years I have been hunting for a good remake to Sid Meier's Pirates. I've played many pirate games in hopes of finding something that at least matches or comes close to what Sid Meier's Pirates does. And this is the only one that I have ever played that comes close to that sort of idea where there's no goal. You're just living on a ship. You go out, you hire a crew, you do some exploration, you hunt for treasures, and you go through this. It has tactical combat. You can go inside towns and visit in the different cities and to recruit more folks for your ship. This is the first one that has come close to what Pirates does, and I think it does a fantastic job of it. It's very ugly, and it has that that JRPG pixel kind of look to it, but it is a incredibly deep and complex exploration sim. Number 3, Sands of Salzaar. This is by Han Squirrel Studio. Came out originally in January. It hit Steam in January, but it had its English translation in September, which is when I first played it. It's a dynamic open world is a big part of this one. Sort of Mountain Blade-like. You're building up your empire, essentially. You start out with just a small group of folks, and you go out and roam the world. Now, this one I played. I did several videos on this one. I should have done more, but it's the thing that stands out with this one is just sort of the open, dynamic world that you're making here. You can capture towns. You can build onto those towns. The battles are massive, and it's kind of a mixture of a few different things. Most importantly, Mountain Blade. But it's a great game. It is in early access, and I try to keep early access off of this list. But this one, as it is, I think if it were not be in early access and that was it, I'd be happy with it. And that's why it gets number 3 here on my list. Number 2 is Shadow Empire. This is by VR Designs and published by Slytherin. It came out in December on Steam, but it was out on their website before then, back in the summer, which is when I first played it. This is a typical war game, but not so typical. And that what stands out for this one is the depth of it, the world building of it. Now, if you ever thought I wanted to play something like Civilization, an empire builder type of turn-based thing, but I want to focus on one era, and I want it to be incredibly deep and focused on that one era, that's what Shadow Empire is. It starts out with a pretty impressive world-building stage. The first part of the game is you building your planet and what lives on the planet and the story of the planet, and then it throws you into the game where you're dealing with not only moving units across some sort of hex map like a typical war game, but you're also dealing with your cities and your empire and trying to keep your population happy, and your counselors have to be happy as well and not revolting against you. It's a fantastic, incredibly complex and deep 4X empire builder. Number 1, Mountain Blade Bannerlord. Now, again, it pains me to put an early access game here at number 1. This is by Tail Worlds Entertainment. Came out in early access on March 30th. But for all the games that I play a lot of games, of course. And it's rare when I find a game that just hooks me like Bannerlord did. Something like Kenshi has done this before, where I get multiple games every day. I have devs sending me games to play, so my list of games is growing. I always have new games to play. When Bannerlord was first out and I was playing it, I didn't care about anything else. All I wanted to do was play more Bannerlord. And that's why this one hits number 1, because it is you get to live in a medieval world. You're building a medieval kingdom sim and running around, capturing towns, building up an army and multiple armies, and it does it amazingly. It's you run around open world, of course, a big thing, dynamic open world, and it sets itself apart because of just how much it hooked me and how much I wanted to play it rather than anything else that was coming out at the time. So that's my list for number 1 through 10 of the best games of the year. I could have put a lot more on here. I think my list when I first started was 24, but I had to narrow it down a bit because I didn't want the video to be 30 minutes long. So anyway, thanks for watching, and happy 2021. May it be better in every possible way. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.